Welcome to another episode of the Being and Doing podcast, where I try to create a space dedicated to the unique minds that are all around us and share their stories that will hopefully challenge, inspire, and stimulate their being. And today with me is a very, very special lady, Lisette Oropesa. And I was finding it very difficult to describe her because she just is and is a lot of things. I feel like she's a poet scientist and a poet because she kind of encompasses a huge range of emotions. And then a scientist because of the meticulousness which she puts in analyzing, preparing, and just, I think, living her life. I don't know if I'm doing her justice, but this is my impression. So I'm just very curious to get to know you better and for my audience to get to know you better. So welcome, Lisette.
Thank you so much. I feel very honored to be here to talk to you today. And I'm really grateful that you feel that way, that you get that impression from whatever it is that we put out there as artists, as singers, that really, it's nice to be able to touch people on a human level and a scientific level at the same time.
Yeah. So I start this podcast by asking, what are some words you can choose that you use to describe yourself with?
Well, depends on who I'm talking to. I think we are all very self-critical as artists a lot of the time. And I always try to, when I'm teaching young singers, I always try to let them know that the worst critic is always you.
Yeah.
But I absolutely am my worst critic, and I'm very self-critical. But I don't want to start off on a negative note, even though I just have. But honestly, I also feel like I'm a Libra. Mm-hmm. That's my astrological sign. And I often feel the pull of opposing forces. So while on one hand, I'm very, very self-critical, on another hand, I'm very grateful when things go well. Like, I really am grateful. I'm happy. I feel a sense of major relief when things go well, when people send me messages or say nice things or compliment my work. It makes the self-critical part better. So I would say, I guess I'm always seeking to balance that feeling of feeling like it's never enough. It's never perfect. I wish I could do that. I'm limited, but I'm also grateful. So I would say self-critical, grateful. I'm very aware of what I've been given that was just a blessing, like a pure blessing. And then I'm aware of the things that I've worked for. And I know that there's a difference. I feel like there are many things that you can get as a gift in a way that are privileges, if you will. Like I feel like I had an advantage being born into a Hispanic family, made me bilingual as a gift. I didn't have to go out and learn Spanish, but it also makes my language study easier. I'm aware that that's an advantage. I'm aware that being a person who is diligent about health is an advantage. But I know that that's something that I work for. That's not something that was just a gift. So I guess you can say self-aware is one word that I like to describe myself with. We could go on and on. I feel like those are probably the main ones at the moment.
So before the interview, I was actually thinking of you as ever evolving. But there is something about what you're describing is evolving with compassion, and there is something about you that I feel that is harnessing that compassion towards yourself. So I'm curious, where do you find that, and how did you work for that, or is that something that came as a gift as well?
I feel like it's mainly that's a gift because I was brought up in a very, I don't want to say a poor family, but I do have to say a poor family. I don't want it to come across like I'm trying to say, oh, feel sorry for me or my background, because we were lucky that my family could come to the United States when they came before I was born, which is another privilege. I was born in the United States and not in Cuba, where my mother and father are from. And I'm very aware that they made a big sacrifice to come to the United States for us, but they were always letting us know that whatever we had to work for, and that nothing was going to come easily without sacrifice. So and we had to share everything. When you grow up in a poor family, it's not like you have many, many, many sets of toys and many, many, many new things to play with. You're getting hand-me-downs. You're getting things that maybe you got at in charitable organizations. The kinds of new clothes. I rarely got new clothes. I mean, so now that I've grown up, I've worked very hard, I've done very well for myself. I am able to look back and notice when I see people that are underprivileged as far as money is concerned, and notice and know what that's like, how hard that must be. And so I feel like that helped me. It helped me build compassion, I suppose, for people. Now that's having to do with people in the sense of people who are struggling financially. But the thing is, so many singers do struggle financially, Alexandra, as I'm sure you know, and start out behind, several steps behind financially, and then they can never get the opportunity to sing or make music because they're behind financially. And that is really hard for me to accept. It's hard for me to see. It's hard for me to deal with. Like, I won many competitions when I was younger, but I also had patrons who helped me, patrons who bought me clothes, patrons who took me to nice dinners, patrons who introduced me to other wealthy people who appreciated me and hired me to come sing for their wedding or sing for this or sing for that. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was like, I had help. I had help. So if that helps me build compassion towards young singers or young artists or artists in general who are trying to make it, who don't have those things, then yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's definitely there.
Yeah. And I'm curious actually, how much of the, let's say, the Cuban spirit and the way of being, you embodying? Because the interesting thing, while I'm observing you, I come from Yugoslavia, which was a communist country, and there is something in that sharing. Yeah. Although there are many downsides, which we don't need to talk about, but there is something about that normalizing, equalizing people that really builds a different way of living and seeing the world. And I'm wondering if that's the case for you. Were you touched by that, or it's just something that I'm experiencing and then projecting?
Alexandra, it's interesting that you say that, because I didn't grow up in communist Cuba. My family fled communist Cuba, which means that even though we had to start out with very little in a capitalist country, and we had a very hard time moving up in a capitalist country, they never let us forget how bad things were in Cuba. Do you know what I mean? So we had to, even though we didn't live in communist Cuba, we were in America, we were in the land of the rich and land of the wealthy, and things everywhere, and everybody has such nice clothes and toys. You need to appreciate these crayons, because there are children in Cuba who have one crayon in the whole classroom to play with, and you have a box. So it was like everything that we even though I went to Cuba, it was like I knew all about it, because that's what taught me to appreciate the things that I did have, even though I would come home and now I'm so ashamed of myself as an adult. But when I was a child, I didn't know that. I would go to school and I would see kids with new shoes or a nice backpack or cool, gadgets, the best calculator, nice watches, whatever, all these things. And I would come home crying because I didn't have new clothes. I didn't have new shoes. I didn't have a cool calculator. I didn't have all those things. And my mother and my family would be mad at me. Would say, how, you don't understand what it's like to have nothing, to have less than nothing, to have any clothes on your back at all. So it was like, at the time I was angry because I was little and I didn't get it. They got it. And they tried to teach me to get it. Now I get it looking back more than I did then,
I mean, that anger is understandable because it's a pain that the child has. That part I understand, but I do also understand that they're trying to give us the wider picture of how life can be.
Yeah. Yes.
And I was also curious then, the Hispanic background. Again, there is something romantic about that that background, and just some sort of freedom, which I personally love. I'm wondering, is that something that you embody, and is that something that you bring with you on the stage and in general in your interactions?
Yes, I think Cuban people, and maybe other people who grow up in societies like this, Cuban people live in a beautiful paradise, and they love music, and they make do with very little. But they're happy people. They're not a sad people. They're not, even though they're oppressed on paper, we think, wow, that's an oppressed society. They don't behave like an oppressed society. They're making music, they're singing, they're dancing, they're having fun, they're on the beach, they're, even though they might have no shampoo, or no, not a lot of food, they find a way to make the best out of a situation. And I think as a Cuban person growing up in a Cuban household, where there's always music playing, there was always family coming over, we were always having a good time together. And we learned to make fun, happy times out of very little, out of just each other, our company, and appreciating the little that we did have. And then I realized, wow, you don't need, they say money doesn't buy happiness. And it's true, it really doesn't. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. I mean, of course, it's nice to have security. It's nice to have things that you need. But real happiness, honest happiness, and it's something that I think everybody searches for and tries to understand and tries to like grab it and hang on to it forever. What is it? And is it tied to money, or is it tied to love, or is it tied to family, or what is it really about? And it can probably be tied to any of those things. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so many people say, if I only had this one thing, I'd be happy. I'd be fulfilled. I'd have everything I need. And for some people, that's love. For some people, that's security. For some people, that's safety. For some people, that's, beauty, youth. I mean, so I always feel, for me, I am truly happy, Alexandra, no matter how self-critical I am, having that household, having that love in my family and that support in my family, and they loved music and they loved that I was singing, that really taught me how to be happy. And I really am. Like, there's nothing missing in my life. Zero. I'm super, super happy.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting you're saying, because I often because I grew up in a family where we would just sing after lunch, and everything would be very music was just generally very present, and I have an embodied experience. So I know I often feel privileged. I felt that was a privilege.
It is. It is. So many people don't have that support. So many singers they have the family trying to get them to stop singing.
Yes. Yeah.
And I had the opposite. So that's a blessing, a gift, advantage.
Yeah. And I'm curious, because we talked about ever evolving, and you are, again, I have a feeling ever evolving from a very healthy place. So from a place of, I want to learn, I'm curious, I want to expand. So I'm wondering, how did you build that relationship with yourself? And you talk a lot about health and fitness and running. So how did you get in touch with that place where I do want to grow, but from an attuned place?
Yeah, I think that the need for change all the time is something that, and not even just change, but improvement, kind of desperately seeking improvement. I feel like it, as an artist, it's kind of being an artist that made that happen, because you can't ever really settle in a technique or in anything, especially as a singer, because I mean, your voice doesn't get put away in a box and go under the bed. Your voice is in your body. So you're ever evolving whether you like it or not. And so your voice is going to react to everything. So if you are settled in your life, like you're happy, you have a good relationship, and you have a career that you're satisfied with, or maybe you live in a great place, all those things are lovely. But then vocally, every day is something new. So you have to be able to shift, and in my personal life, I've always felt like there were just things that I needed to change, that I work on changing every day. And one of them was my body. I was very unhealthy for many, many years. I grew up eating junk food, essentially. A lot of that was because we were just poor. A lot of that was because I grew up in the South. And I mean, the culture there is a very different type of lifestyle, what you eat and the activities that you do. I was never involved in sports. I was always in music or studying. So I didn't, go outside and play sports with my friends. It was not that life at all. But the problem was that I gained a lot of weight and I grew up getting heavier and heavier. And then even though I was I was a very lucky singer and that I got many opportunities because I could sing well, the judges or the directors always let me know, by the way, though, you're too fat. And I got that all the time, Alexandra, in high school, even. I got it in college. I got it after college. It started to really get to something that they were basically telling me, fix this or else, because and that was something I had to put together and find a new way to live my life. And I think, I don't know if you've ever been overweight, Alexandra, if you've ever been a fat person.
I haven't.
Especially if you're one when you're younger.
Mm-hmm.
Those scars of being made fun of, being bullied, being told you were fat and ugly, they're forever. Mm. They never go away, no matter how thin you get, no matter how beautiful, quote unquote, people say that you are, no matter how healthy even that you become, you appreciate your health that much more because you know that in 3 cheeseburgers, you could go the other way really quickly, because you've been there. So it's kind of, again, I appreciate it. I know it's something I had to work very hard for. I have to continue to work very hard for. But it's made me happier. It's made me sing better. It's made me feel more confident in everything that I do. And it inspires other people because people write to me and they say, oh, Lisette, I want to run because of you. I want to, get active. I want to change my life. I want to lose weight. They're telling me I need to lose weight. And I always try to tell them, give them the best advice I can, which is only you know how to do it and when to do it. Don't do it because someone told you. Do it when you're ready. And I never tell young singers that they need to lose weight, ever. I wish that was never even a conversation that singers ever had to have, ever. But it's still very much part of the industry. It's very much part of what the public sees from us. And they talk to us. The public tells me all the time. They used to tell me all the time when I was overweight. They told me when I lost weight. It's not like, even if the intendants don't talk about it, even if the directors don't talk about it, even if managers and agents don't talk about it, the public does. And the public will, whether you like it or not. A patron will come up to you and tell you you're too fat to wear that dress, period. And it's the kind of thing singers deal with. We can't escape it. So
yeah, so there is a very important, I think, question for me there, because I remember when I was dancing, and there is something about being an artist and being chosen by someone, and that we are somewhat not in control of who is going to choose us. And I remember I was even told, you are not pretty enough. And we can teach an ugly girl to dance, but we cannot make we can teach a pretty girl to dance, but we cannot make an ugly girl pretty. And
oh my God.
Yeah.
And you are so beautiful. I hope you know that.
Yeah, now I do, but at the time it was not easy.
Oh my God.
So I'm just thinking about you being told you are too fat or looking whatever in your dress. I'm just wondering, and I do understand the scars. Sometimes I actually normally am told I'm too skinny, so it's like the opposite. You're always too something, whatever that is. But I'm just wondering about that place for an artist, and about accepting the place where we are. Because in the type of therapy I do, there is something that people call paradoxical theory of change. And it states that we cannot be something else until we accept who we are here and now. And this is a very paradoxical, obviously, thing. So I'm wondering, how did this change happen for you? Again, still following you for some time, knowing that it feels like it has come from a healthy place. And how did you find that place of self-acceptance, regardless of the scars that I do understand have stayed with you?
Well, I mean, I certainly knew that I was overweight. I never thought that I was not. That's the thing. I think all overweight people know that. And I think people don't realize that they know that. That's why they're always telling them. And it's insulting to tell a fat person, you're fat, right? Like they don't know. Like you're the newscaster of the day giving them news. By the way, you're fat. Like that's why I never tell them. I never say this to them. They don't need me to tell them. They know. So of course I knew. Now, the problem is, Alexandra, that it hurts your confidence, because if you're fat, but you go to sing an audition, you're not going to sing the audition from a place of apologizing and being ashamed of yourself and be like, I'm sorry, I know you guys don't like the way I look, but I'm going to sing for you anyway. You would never do that. In fact, you would always do the opposite, which is I'm here, I'm present, I'm giving the best of my emotions, my facial expressions. I'm comfortable in my body, even though my body is large. But then you get so much feedback that it could hurt your confidence. And then that hurts your ability to then sing sometimes, because it hurts. So did I know that I was overweight before I started to take on the challenge of changing? Yes, 100%. That's why I always tell people when they do ask me for personal advice, I say, don't do it because someone else told you. Mm-hmm. They're going to tell you every day. When you are ready to say, I want to make a change, I'm going to do it, then you go forward and you talk to your doctor and you talk to your nutritionist or whatever steps you want to take, but to say I'm being pressured and I'm being this and I'm being that. And it's like, do you feel like you need to change? For some people, simply losing weight is not the answer. It's not going to solve their problem as a singer, if they're having a problem as a singer, because some people think, and I thought this too, I thought, well, if I just lose weight, maybe, I will have every job that I want. And that's not the case. Simply, there are other things that have to be addressed. And also, as I'm sure you know in your work, I mean, people, what they eat and who they are as a human being is very much tied up with their emotional state. So if you just start going to the gym and start dieting and you're losing weight, you're going to, at some point, maybe confront some psychological block that at some point you have to confront that dieting is not going to fix. Dieting might make you thinner, might make you look great in your clothes, it might make you feel good, all that. But whatever that psychological block that you have, that does need to be addressed. So, I mean, why are you eating? Why are you making your emotions, feeding your emotions this way? Why do you feel down about yourself? Is it really because you're overweight, or is there something else? So for me, being overweight was a big problem, but it was that I always felt like I wondered if there was something more I needed to do. Like, what more do I need to do that I'm not doing? Mm-hmm. Because even when I started to lose weight, my path didn't just suddenly open and every single door was open to me. No, there were still a few blocks. And I remember just being desperate and being like, what am I doing wrong? I've lost weight. I've worked on my body. I've worked on my look. I have my social media. I have this. What's the problem? Is my voice? Is it my voice? If it's that, please tell me so I can fix it. So I was always looking for the what, the why. And eventually I had to make some professional decisions that were difficult, but were the right ones. And I had to have a few hard talks with myself about realizing vocally what I really was and who I really was, and then accepting that and going from there. I wasn't the coloratura I wanted to be. I wanted to sing much higher. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to sing in the middle. And I wasn't a full lyric. I was in the middle somewhere, which is kind of hard. It's like having wavy hair. Like you're not all the way curly, you're not all the way straight. You're kind of in the middle somewhere. And usually you have to make some adjustment to fit into one group or the other. And there were people who, didn't like my voice, don't like my voice to this day. There are people who don't agree with my technique. Maybe there are people, all kinds of that. I mean, we get all that feedback. Yeah. But what do I think personally? You know what? I'm doing the best I can do with the instrument that I've been given, period. And now I accept it more than I did.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a really long answer. I'm so
No,
sorry.
I actually really love it. And I think it's really useful because I think one of the reasons I do this interviews is talking about success. And the reasons I want to talk about it is because we normally always see the finished product. Wow. And I think behind that there is a story which we often, when we come to the finished product, romanticize, but I feel like you're very authentic in expressing the story, the journey. So that's
too much.
No, I mean, not for me at least.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So there's one thing when I listen to your interviews, and in general, because I am thinking about the voice a lot, because it's a very meaningful thing for me, and that is that when we are using the voice, we are the instrument.
Yes.
And you talked about separating the criticism about the voice from actually the core of who we are and from our being, although that's very difficult. So I'm very curious to hear, how was that process of realizing and honing yourself, like your whole self as an instrument being, and what were maybe some challenges, or what supported you actually in this journey?
Well, you're absolutely right that, the whole self is what expresses. It's really even more than just the voice, because I mean, you can get up there and sing on a record and people are listening, but when you're on stage, it's theater and people are also watching and they're experiencing everything, the voices around them, but they're also looking at you, and you're a three-dimensional image. You're not a camera, a camera angle, two-dimensional kind of thing. So one of the greatest, most liberating things actually I learned in yoga about singing, and that is to, and I also had a yoga teacher who is kind of a guru, very important man in my life, named Nathaniel Murray. And he was our fitness instructor when we were young artists at the Met. And Nathaniel is one of those amazing, like, he's like so enlightened, like nothing bothers him, just brilliant, all health through and through, shines and radiates being. And when I'm around him, I'm just so happy. And he's such a loving and encompassing person. He is yoga. He is yoga come to life, And one of the things he used to always say was, go as far as you can go today. Go as far as you can go today. And then in yoga class, you often hear something like, find your intelligent edge and don't go past that. Or, go with where you are, accept where you are in this pose and this journey today, and, make adjustments and all that. That whole idea of it being okay to not be level 10, it being part of the journey that you're at level 2, level 3, and that you have to adjust sometimes. And that's fine. In fact, that's preferable than you pushing yourself and doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And yoga taught me that. It's like it teaches you to accept the humble limits of your body at the time that you have them. And that's something that vocally I have had to do, that everyone has to do. I mean, I would love to be able to sing anything I want, whenever I want, as high and as low as I want, forever. And have a fresh voice of a 30-year-old forever. Yeah, no, not going to happen. And that's this ridiculous thing to try to accomplish and to try to go after, because it's not healthy. You'll be disappointed constantly, and you'll never love and accept your craft for what it is, and saying, you know what, I'm a human being. I have these limits, but I also have these flaws that when another being observes them, they go, oh, look, that's me. I have those flaws too. Or look, this vulnerability, I relate to that. Or look, that confidence, that strength, that fearlessness, of, I don't care how ugly I look in this moment. I'm going to give you this emotion in its raw ugliness, or whatever it is. And that is very powerful. As a performer, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like when I'm on stage, nobody can stop me. Nobody could say, stop the show. Her hair is out of place. I mean, that's not going to happen. And I think when you're an audience member and you're observing other singers who sing that way and perform that way, you're overwhelmed by the fearlessness of them opening up that way. And I've seen so many singers that are like that, and then I've seen singers who aren't, singers who have a wall, singers who are always trying to look beautiful, singers who are never really going all the way to it. And that's where they are in their journey. And there are a lot of things that they do that are great. And I try to appreciate what's great about those singers, but I know that I'm not that singer.
Yes.
I'm not that singer. If you're looking for, a needlepoint perfection version of every single thing, I'm not that singer. I try very hard to work on the needlepoint technique and all those things in the dressing room, in the studio. But then when I go on stage, I really try to service the emotion of the moment, no matter what that is. Ideally, I'm not up there singing like crap. Of course, nobody wants to go up there and sing like and forget how to sing. I don't want to do that either. But sometimes if you have to decide in the moment between doing something beautifully and doing something exciting and surprising and unexpected, in the moment, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And that's fun. That's one of the joys of performing, getting to decide,
So actually the reason I invited you to do this interview was your performance of Violetta in La Traviata, and actually the scene of her death and this wonderful illusion of her being infused with life and dying. I'm getting goosebumps while I'm talking, remembering you doing that.
Oh, thank you.
But actually that is one of my questions. You are touching in all of your performances very overwhelming human emotions and experiences. In this particular case, it was death. There is jealousy, and the ability to actually connect with death. And I could see that raw emotion coming from you. I mean, at the moment, there were moments where I was not even hearing your singing as much as I see your emotion. And then it was constantly like, shifting between those two.
That's great. Oh my God.
I am actually very curious when you do perform these moments and you connect, because I honestly cannot imagine you not connecting to this thing, to these emotions. Where is that place in you? Because they are quite overwhelming. And so what keeps your ground to be able to express them and then go back and kind of live your life or just have normal everyday duties?
Well, I do want to say one thing, Alexandra. A lot of that is you, not me. And I know that because some audience members perceive the beauty that is inside them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry. I've had this kind of little philosophy about it. There are people who don't like anything. And they say, oh, it's because my ear is very refined or blah, blah. And then, or I have different tastes. But then there are people who love everything. They just love everything. And that's more them than everything. Everything isn't terrible, but everything isn't great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If you look objectively. So it's really the person's reaction. So the fact that you're saying, well, I felt this was happening and this was happening. That's your experience of the performance. Yeah. There's your heart projecting something back. And this is what's beautiful about a live audience. And I mean, sometimes I think to myself when I'm seeing something beautiful, like a mountain or a sunset or something, and I think, wow, to me, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But if I'm ever unhappy or sad or hurting or whatever, yes, I don't see it. I don't see the beauty.
No, not at all. I know.
It's like, but the beauty's there. But yes, I'm not seeing it. So the fact that you have this experience during a performance says more about you than it does about me. I'm going to just say that first. The second thing I will say is that because I know that everyone reacts differently, I don't try to get a certain reaction out of people, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of like saying when you play for laughs, versus playing for this or playing for that, because as an actor, you can play any direction you want. Generally, the director will tell you, I want you to play this way, anger or this emotion. And you just play that, even though in your heart, you might know, I don't agree with that. Or the audience wouldn't agree with that because this doesn't relate to something else they've been watching. And so as a performer, you have to try to kind of juggle where you're supposed to be going, with where you want to be going, with what's really happening, with blah, blah. And so all these different things, all these different factors play in. Now, Violetta, when she's by herself during the last act and she's reading the letter and she's remembering Alfredo and she's going through her, her past and how, she'll die alone. And she's quite depressed, quite depressed. That's the lowest that she feels. It's like the lowest point in her life is right before her death. And then he comes and it's all better for a minute. And then she realizes she's not saved. Her disease didn't magically disappear. And she has this horrible smack in the wall of reality because her fantasy was keeping her alive. And now the fantasy is there and she's still going to die. That is the worst realization because it's the giant, the pessimism happening.
Yeah.
The thing that she knew would happen, which was that she would die, even though she tried to hope that maybe God will save me. The fact that it doesn't happen makes her very upset. She starts screaming and hollering and has this whole thing. And I think it's a blessing that before she dies, she has a moment of feeling like she's alive again. Like there's a miracle. There's a miracle. I feel fine. I don't feel any pain. Mm-hmm. It's like the one grace that she gets before death. Mm-hmm. And isn't that interesting? That's like the last thing she feels.
Yes. Yeah.
Instead of like, oh no, ahimè, che dolore. It's not that. It's, oh, che gioia. Oh, gioia. And I feel like that the irony of that moment, that's what breaks our heart like 100 times over, because we want her to live. We want them to be together. We want them to be okay. And we don't get that. And that's, again, us running into the harsh reality of life, of the inevitable, of whatever sad thing may be happening. But, and if I connect to that reality, I've never experienced anything as harsh as what Violetta has gone through, of course. But if I connect to that, the moments in my life, in all of our lives, when we felt like I wanted something so much, and I didn't get it. And it broke me. So it was so hard. Whatever it was that you wanted, a love, a job, a compliment from someone, a friendship that you wanted so desperately to have, to keep, and didn't come for you. And there's nothing you can do. You're helpless. You're completely powerless. Because everybody connects to that, Alexandra, I do try to then be in that headspace.
Yeah. But there is an interesting thing. Although you say it's about me, there is one thing that you are willing to connect to that place, and you're not afraid of connecting to being powerless. So that's something I think I appreciate about how you perform is the fearlessness of connecting to things that can be potentially shattering to connect to a place of I'm hopeless, or I am alive now and then I'm not, and the whole complexity of the moment of death, which I think sometimes we simplify, and yet in your performance it's not simple. It's everything. It's joy, is depression, is sadness, is like a flamboyant mix of everything. So that's something I think I appreciated about your performance, because as you say, the flat singers, they will be what Freddie Mercury would say, they give us a touch of heaven, which is perfection, but that's not life. And I felt like what you gave, at least me, on that performance, and I think probably many others, is a touch of life, actually.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me. It really does. I'm very grateful that you feel that way. And if, being fearless on stage is not something that I do naturally, there's still a lot of things that I'm very afraid to do on stage. I'm very afraid to go all the way and experience on stage. There are performers that I've learned from, that I still learn from, that, like Dessay, Natalie Dessay, I was a huge admirer of her craft and everything that she did. And I always felt like she was totally fearless. Like there was no barriers between her and me when I was watching her in the audience. And I wanted so much to be that way. Even though I mean, she doesn't sing anymore, but every performance she did to me that I saw left such an incredible impression. And I don't, but you don't want to imitate that kind of thing in the sense of, oh, I do what Dessay does, which is I do this movement or that that gesture. Those are the gestures that come for her. That again, that's something yoga taught me. Like how do I interpret this move in my body?
Yes.
Where does that come from? My center, but maybe, but I follow the lead of seeing her where her gestures originate mentally or emotionally. Maybe there's a thought that motivates a gesture. And that's actually something we have to do as actors that I've had so many great directors teach me about. And I'm still learning every time I do something. You never just originate a gesture just to do a gesture, or just because the director said, now you push her, or now you open the door. You have to have something that tells you before you do that to do it. And that kind of process, when you're performing, when you're putting on an opera in particular, because an opera has a whole story, it's a theatrical piece. That is so fun to find all those little times where the light bulb goes off and you do something that, we do every day in life as human beings, but it's so, when we get on stage, we turn into like these like wooden blocks. Like, I don't know what to do. Why am I doing, and the director's trying to tell you, just walk from one side of the room to the other and put this down. And it's like the hardest thing to do because you're judging everything you're doing. And does this look cool? Do I look stupid? Am I like facing the wrong way? Like, cause you're always judging yourself. You're always mirroring in your mind. You're going, God, I hope this looks right. I hope this looks, and then, but the audience can see that when you're like not sure. Oh my God, the audience can feel it. Like you have a sign over me that says, I have no idea what I'm doing, but if you learn how to mask that and learn how to work through that and use it to help you find good things, that's actor work. All that doesn't have anything to do with singing.
Yes.
Singing just adds another like level of difficulty to all of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm curious about the difference between performing for huge audiences in big spaces and with very intimate small audiences. And I have interviewed some singers and they told me that there is a difference, and then sometimes does not have to be, but I'm wondering how is it for you, and what do each different kind of presentations bring out in yourself?
Well, I definitely think that there are some differences, just like there are differences when there's a camera, because, and I think singers get very self-conscious. I know I certainly do. I mean, it's not easy to look good while singing, but you can't perform for the camera when there's an audience there. You have to perform for the audience. Now, one thing I learned very early on when I was a young artist was this idea that when you're on a big stage, you never want to make yourself smaller. And this is something that actually women do. Women make themselves smaller all the time. We're always diminishing. When we're sitting, we're crossing our legs, we're becoming thinner, whereas men spread out. And I've never played a pants role. Actually, no, I've played one pants role in my life, and it was the little Cupid in Orfeo e Euridice. But whenever I see mezzo sopranos, great mezzos who play pants roles do the spread. They open themselves. And this is great for playing a man. Very believable. But women need to do it too. Like on stage, like for example, you never want to give less than 3/4 of your face to the audience if you can avoid it. Even though some directors like you to turn in profile and talk to a singer this way, but the audience loses half of your face and half of your voice. So you get to learn things you learn through just operatic craft. That now in a small house, you can get away with much more of diminishing yourself. The subtle things they read in a smaller house much more than they read in a huge opera house like the Met or any large stage. So you'll almost never see a Met opera singer turn away from the audience or turn in profile from the audience. And if they're doing that, 9 times out of 10, it's because they're not experienced or because the director really, really pushed them to do that. And they'll do it in very few specific moments where it's a strong choice, but almost always your gestures, everything needs to be larger. However, another thing that I think is really useful to know, large house or small house, is that movement takes the eye. So, and a lot of singers feel uncomfortable being still. I know I feel uncomfortable being still, but stillness also, when you're alone on stage, can be really, really powerful. And you want to trust it, because if you start moving, immediately all we're seeing is the movement. So it's like, use movement carefully is what I mean. Like, use it thoughtfully. It's like an accessory wall, right? It's the accessory wall. Use it thoughtfully. Otherwise, all you're doing is accessorizing. We don't see the core, which is you, which we don't want you to minimize. It's like another way of minimizing yourself is moving too much. So and these are all things that I've just learned from stage, that I've been taught, that I've found through experiences that have helped me, that I try to remember when I can.
And how comfortable were you taking space?
At first, it's funny. The first time I ever played a character who was not a servant, it was funny. The first time I ever played a queen, there was something that happened during rehearsal, like something fell to the floor, and I went to go pick it up. And the director, I was in rehearsal, he stopped me. He said, "What are you doing?" "I'm picking up this thing that fell off the floor." He said, "You would never pick up something. You have a servant to do that for you." And because I was always playing Susanna, I had played the maid, I played Gilda, I had played characters that would do something like that, would pick up something off the floor, but a queen never picks up something. There's another thing he was telling me: when you move through the crowd, they move for you. You don't make room for them. You move straight and they scatter, they spread apart like the Red Sea. They move up to the side and you go down the middle. And I had such a hard time with that, Alexandra, because I was like, no, my natural instinct is, let me turn sideways so we can both fit, or let me wait for you to pass, or and so I had to learn to do that. It's hard for me. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me because I want to adjust, I try to be more flexible, and I want to diminish myself. That's, my instinct. I've had to learn to work do you ever study Alexander technique before?
I haven't, no.
One of the fundamental things of Alexander technique when you're getting ready to do anything is the natural way you do it is might throw you out of alignment. So you want to tell yourself, okay, I want to get up out of this chair, but I don't want to do it by lifting my chin and getting up like that. So you literally tell yourself, no, I'm not doing it that way. I'm going to do it this way. And you direct yourself to do it another way. So it's kind of the same idea of like, when I'm on stage, I go, Lisette, don't hide yourself, or don't, diminish yourself. And I have to remember to do that. Sometimes I don't remember, but when I try to remind myself I find it helpful, but it makes you feel vulnerable. That's the thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. So I'm curious there about what do you feel that the fact that you were naturally hiding yourself at some stage of your career was stopping you for actually getting into the role that truly belonged to your voice and to the capacity you have?
Yes. Tremendously. When you look at the singers who are the most successful showmen, who, whether or not you like their voice or not, they're excellent performers. They are people who never diminish themselves, never hide themselves. And they have this kind of charisma all the time that is at ease. And those are the people that not everybody feels comfortable being. I mean, some people love to sing, really do, but don't feel comfortable with the showmanship aspect of our career. And that doesn't mean you don't have to be a big, hot air balloon on stage. Of course not. You certainly don't have to be that. But I think if you are making yourself into a blade of grass that's just there and you're singing a starring role, maybe the audience won't have the reaction to your voice that they would have if you gave them more to look at. Yeah. Or if you were able to somehow not have a barrier of self-doubt kind of overshadowing your performance, because it does overshadow your performance. It might even get in your head about your singing. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, it's a bit of a, this is why opera directors are they're great psychologists. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
The good ones, they're good at figuring out what it is that you don't feel comfortable doing and finding a way to either adjust that for you without pushing you into forcing you to do something that you don't, or finding a way to make you feel like it's okay. We're all here together with you. Like maybe you need to take off your clothes on stage. You have to get in your underwear. I've had to do that. Oh my God. It's really distressing. Talk about not being comfortable, wanting to diminish everything about myself. And the director said, no, she's a fantasy. You are a fantasy. Be that fantasy in this moment. I was like, but I'm not a fantasy. Said, but you are. And it was like, he was very generous about it and everything. And I felt like, but it really, all directors have to do that with their performers, I think, sometimes,
And I'm curious, this question is sitting with me for a while because we talked about difficult to accept reality. What was one truth about reality that you found really difficult to accept and face?
You don't want to know. You don't want to know. It's the moment I learned. You talking about the career or just my life in general? It's kind of the same.
Let's do,
concept.
Both.
The concept in the career that I learned that was very hard was that you can't, not all the best singers have the best careers. No. It doesn't, a great voice does not immediately result in, no matter how hard you work, it does not result in a great career. A great career is the result of some things that include generally great singing, ideally, but that's not the only ingredient. It's like you can't just have flour and make a cake. You have to have other things, but you need flour. So that was a little hard for me because I always thought growing up, the cream eventually rises to the top.
Yeah.
And it does. I really do believe that, but I don't think the cream is just the singing.
Yeah.
At least not anymore. Some people hate that concept. Unfortunately, I agree in a lot of ways. It's frustrating that it's not that way because there are some people who are so very gifted who never get the opportunities, and it drives me crazy. And there are people who have to wait and wait and wait and wait to have a chance. And then by the time they get the chance, they've missed 5 years of what would have been a great time for them. So that was very hard for me. And then the personal reality is very similar. It's the idea that I can't control everything. I feel embarrassed to say that. I feel kind of ashamed of myself that that's something that disappointed me because it sounds so, I don't know. I sound like a jerk. I feel like I sound like a jerk, but when I realized, I don't have control over every outcome. I can't control I have to learn to relinquish control over things. And it's frustrating. I want things to go a certain way. I want to do things to contribute to the outcome that I want.
Yeah.
When the outcome doesn't come, it frustrates me because I think I did this. I should have that. Like it's math. It's not math. Life is not math. If life were math, we would all be in a very different situation. Life's not math. And that's a harsh reality that I'm ashamed to admit that aggravates me.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I have gone through the same. The last 2 years have been very humbling. And I also, being a scientist, and knowing that, as a scientist, you feel like, oh, I do have a lot of control because I understand so much about the world, but actually, not really. And actually what helped me is there is a book which is called The Unknown Unknowns. So the things that we know, the things that we don't know. So we know that we don't know, which are easy. So we Google them, but there are these unknown unknowns, which they will pose in front of us. And those are the ones we need to kind of make space for and let our intuition guide us to. And actually in this small essay, the writer says that it is the spice of life, because if we could control everything and could control the outcomes, it will be very limited, the universe.
That's true.
But I definitely empathize because I have been in that exact place and was humbled by life.
Yes. Yes.
So I want to talk here about the concept of success. We touched briefly about this, but I'm wondering, what does the concept of success look for you now, and how did it change over time? Because you are quite outwardly successful, but I'm pretty sure you felt yourself worthy of success much earlier.
Thank you for saying that. I believe everyone's worthy of success. I really do. And but I also, success, it depends on how you define it.
Mhm.
And I've struggled with that definition in my life several times, Alexandra, because I used to think that success was having a steady, at least career-wise, was having a steady career singing and making enough money to get by on only singing.
Mhm.
And I thought, okay, that's the definition of success. But does that necessarily make you happy? For some people, sure. For some people, no. There needs to be something else. So then, okay, so then it's having every job, being able to sing success, being able to sing and make enough, make ends meet, and having a great love life. Is that enough? For some people, yes. For some people, no. I also want blah. So it's like, what was that always for me? I always knew deep down that I would be a singer or a musician. So if I can say I check that off on my list, I sing for a living. Yes, success. I'm doing what I knew I was meant to do. That makes me very happy. I'm not flipping burgers. I'm not waiting tables. I am very happy and lucky that I can do this as my job. And I have a wonderful husband. I have the most incredible, beautiful relationship, wonderful marriage for which I'm more than grateful. And for that, if I lost everything else, but still only had that, I would still be happy, because that's really, for me, love is everything. Always was. Career is fine, but love was always the most important thing to me. So I have those two things together, which is like next nirvana, next level happiness, like everything I could possibly want. But I think what I would like to have more of, if you will, is a little bit more inner peace. And I strive to find that. And I find it sometimes, I find little like pockets of like, oh, there it is. For a minute, I had that. And I struggle because I think I struggle with anxiety. I know I struggle with anxiety. I have to accept that. I struggle with anxiety because I don't know what the outcome of things will be. And it stems from that need to control everything or try to do everything in my power to make the outcome I want happen. But then also knowing that there are things out of my control that will contribute and can contribute to a disaster. And I would like to be the kind of person, I would like to get to a point where I can be at peace with any outcome. So what is success for me? I think I have it. I'm happy. I'm alive. I'm healthy. I sing for a living. I have a wonderful husband. I have a beautiful family that loves me and that I love. I get to tour the world. When I count my blessings, Alexandra, it's like they number the stars, if you will, and I can't say that there's anything missing from my life. What I would like to be able to do is manage my feeling that if things don't go well, it'll still be okay. Yeah. That's hard for me. Do you ever feel like the world's going to end if this one performance doesn't go well? Like, oh my God, like what the hell?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I must admit, exactly this morning.
Really?
I was having a session with my therapist, and I have touched that place, which is the place of I'm at the seaside, everything is good, and yet there is an overwhelming sense of loneliness and of fear that things will not end up well. And as you, or to some extent, not maybe as much as you, but I do have all the things that I could check off of my lists. And yet I touched this point, and I actually was reading some of your posts, and I realized, yeah, this is like, you wrote that you were in Grand Canyon or somewhere and saying, oh, I wish I could bring a little bit of that peace or that moment with me. Mm-hmm. yes, that's something. Sometimes I feel like if I can bottle up these moments and just have them and have the safety inside myself to know
Yes.
whatever comes, I'll weather it. But it's not it's not an easy thing to weather.
Right.
And I think it comes again coming from a country where there was a lot of trauma. I now understand where these things coming from, and that feeling, that of transgenerational feeling of unsafety,
Yes.
and of not being seen, and yeah. So I do understand. Definitely can relate to that.
Oh, bless you. Well, yeah. And I think these past couple of years and all the, the news
Yes.
that we read all the time, it really contributes to anxiety, to feelings
Yeah,
of helplessness and loneliness and feeling isolated. All that I think got really worse for me during the pandemic. And even now, because I always feel like you shouldn't be happy. There are people dying. There are people, you know what I'm saying? That message came across very strong.
yeah,
To the point that sometimes I felt like, gee, I really shouldn't post about my successes ever, because there's always going to be some horrible disaster going on in the world. And that's more important. That should take more precedent in my emotional, what I'm contributing to the world should be about that and not about singing opera. Who cares about singing opera? You know what I'm saying? Like, so I got a lot of that feeling during the pandemic. And once in a while, I don't post about successes, because posting is, who cares what social media, but social media is kind of how we communicate now with our public. And no, I don't always post about every success, because sometimes it's not appropriate. It's insensitive. And at the time, you're not trying to be insensitive, but if you are only ever posting about the tragedies, and you're only ever living in the news cycle of difficulty with the shootings that are going on, with racism that is ever present in our society, with unfair, with the economy going the way it's going, and COVID still very much a part of our fabric of society. If that's the world that we're in, that we're stuck in, and it is, unfortunately, then if you have anxiety and if you really do think, oh God, things aren't going to be okay, it's very easy for you to be right.
yeah.
Things aren't okay. Things aren't okay, and that's really rough to weather, because even if they're not okay, Alexandra, when you go to work, you have to do your job.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't you? Somebody's waiting for you. You have a responsibility.
Yeah.
If you have children, you need to be there for your children. You can't be locked in your room crying and neglecting them, even though you might need to be sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you have to balance your responsibilities with your social. Where are you in the social cycle, I guess, that's rough.
Yeah. I mean, like, what helps me is actually understanding the fact that I think what is a general conversation is this either I'm or tragically desperate or very happy. And I guess, like, coming back to Violetta and her last dying scene, in that moment, she's everything.
We all are.
And
that's why we relate.
Exactly. So for me, what really helps is to remind that I can be very sad for what's happening in Ukraine, and very happy that I'm finally getting a UK citizenship.
That's amazing.
So those are things that, yeah, I agree. But it is easy to slip into thinking that I need to be either very happy or extremely sad.
Yes, you're right.
So coming back to your husband, that's one thing I really wanted to touch upon, because it's just beautiful to see the way he cares about you, and the way just the genuine connection you two have is beautiful. And I'm curious, because there was a story behind that as well. I'm curious, how did you allow that support to come into your life as someone who is actually very self-sufficient?
I'm not self-sufficient at all. I need Stephen from the moment I wake up in the morning to the moment I go to sleep, girlfriend. He's so he's really my other half, and I feel grateful that we found each other when we did in high school. It was when we met, and then we were apart for many, many years, and then we reconnected on Facebook back when Facebook was still innocent, when Facebook was its naive self. And we connected that way. And then we kind of started to reassemble our lives so that we could be together, because I always loved him. He was my first love. I never forgot him. He kept all my letters. He never forgot me. So we had this incredibly deep, young, old connection. He was my first little boyfriend, but I didn't kiss him. It was so innocent, puppy love. But I was always in love with him because I always thought he was so special. Like, he stood out to me. He was like this another being. Like, everybody else was just, I want to steal a word from a friend of mine that I was talking to about love. She said, everybody else, compared to her boyfriend, everybody else is beige.
Yeah.
Compared to him. And I'm like, that's exactly how I feel about Stephen. Like, everyone else is beige, and Stephen is like this beautiful, like, bright luminosity. And he and I had to rearrange our lives so that we could be together, because when we were getting together as adults, and we weren't teenagers anymore, right? We were both, he had to uproot his life. I was moving out of Brooklyn into Manhattan. I was leaving the Young Artist Program. I was beginning an international journey. And it was like, we had to sit down and have a bunch of hard conversations about, okay, what are we doing? You get caught up in the love, but you really do have to figure out what you're doing, what you want. And we both wanted the same thing, which is where I think love, you have to both want the same thing. Ideally, you can love each other, but a relationship works when you're both on the same page. At least that's how it's worked best for me and Stephen. Yeah. We're both on the same page about what we want, what we want to contribute, what we're committing to. He had to accept my career, and this is what I wanted to do. And he had to accept what his role in it could be, if any, and make a role in it. Maybe at first he wasn't sure what his role would be in my life. Was he just going to follow me around, or are we going to be separate 6 months out of the year? Or do we want kids? What all those things had to be discussed, and we both agree on all those big things. And now we have a wonderful, loving, fulfilled relationship. We never fight. We never, and it's interesting also, Alexandra, that he and I are so very different. There's so little in common, truly. We agree on the big things, but we're both very different approaches about life, about who we are, our emotional nature, and how we express ourselves, and the kinds of things, the interests that we have. And that keeps things cool, because we're always talking. He's teaching me something new, and I'm teaching him something new, and we're learning from each other. And we're not just regurgitating the same subject matter. And we're not both in love with the same subject matter. If he was another singer, all we would do is talk about singing. So, maybe I don't want to judge other singers who date singers. Not at all. Maybe not. But, and we also cultivated many interests together. So running, this is something we both were terrible at, and both started to do together as a couple. And we run as a couple. And that's something that helped us bond, helped us grow. So it's not just that we love each other, but it's the activities that we do together as a couple that I felt like have made us very strong and very happy. That we're not just, he goes to work, I go to work, we come home, we eat, and we go to sleep. It's so much more than that. And our communication is very, very high, very just ever present. That's why I said, if I don't feel like I could ever be self-sufficient now, I can't even walk down the street. I'm useless, so Stevie, he's really, I just love him so much.
I'm curious there, what I always search for, and I'm wondering, because you are an ever-evolving person, and I don't see you stopping doing that. How do you evolve together, and how do you make space for the new yous that appear, or things that just appear and you just can't predict that they will come?
Mm-hmm. Well, we agree on being ever-evolving people. Actually, he loves change. Stephen loves change. He loves trying new things more than I do, even, he'll be the first person, if there's a new drink, new flavor, he's drinking the new flavor.
Okay.
I want to try the new flavor. But you might not like it. I would be the one to say, no, I would want the old flavor that I know I like, and so he has this everlasting curiosity, and a wonderful enthusiasm also. So not only is he always curious about trying new things, and he's never afraid to try something new, which is great in our job because we're always in a new place, speaking another language. He's also very enthusiastic about it. He's not like, oh, okay, I'll go. Okay, let's do this again. No, on the contrary, he's always looking for something to do, something fun, something. And I think it's because he likes change. He enjoys not just change, but more about going somewhere, a journey, a constant evolution, but a sense of andare, a sense of go. He's not a sit down, sit back guy. Never. And I wish more people could be like that. I learned from him because it's so easy for me to get caught up in a cycle, an emotional cycle, or whatever, not a particularly healthy one sometimes. And Stephen will be the first person to get out of that, because it's like he just innately knows that that's not a healthy place to be in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but he's also very accepting and compassionate towards me when I need something. Like if I need to sleep more because I'm really tired, he's not going to wake me up and force me out of bed. He lets me sleep. You know what I mean? Like he's there for me in a way that, I mean, if everybody that I talk to, everybody that knows Stephen is like, we want to clone him. But he's just a great man. And I'm lucky, and I've become a better person because of him. So, yeah.
That's very beautiful. So I'm being mindful of the time. So I'll just ask one short question before we wrap up.
Okay.
So it's about teaching. And what do you feel like you are doing for young performers? And do you like the word teaching, or is it something else that you think you're doing?
Well, I mean, I do, teach in the sense that when there's a young singer that comes to me and we have a coaching together, I do try to give them advice or tips on things, or not even so much teaching. Teaching isn't always showing someone how to do something. Sometimes it's showing someone how the questions to ask to get to the answer that's right for them, if that makes sense. Because I might say, look, for me, I do this, but I've also tried this. It didn't really work for me, but maybe it'll work for you. Why don't you try that? So it's kind of like I give them a space to try something out and give them the feedback and say, hey, that sounded really great in your voice. You should do that vowel, because for me, that was really excellent. You know what I mean? So it's like I give feedback, but I also answer questions. I mean, if somebody has a question about a role or a pronunciation and they just need to know the answer, then yeah, I'll try to let them know as best I can. But again, I think that I learn when I teach more than anything. Like it's almost self-serving to teach other singers, because you go, oh wow, that's really, I never thought to try this that way, the way that singer who's totally naive, doesn't have all the hangups that I do. That naive, free person is doing this and this, and it's great. I want to try to find that in myself, if possible, So I like to just be there for them. I like to encourage them. It's not, I don't like, and I always try to tell them, don't try to be like me necessarily. Being like me is not what you want. You want to be the best you that you can be. Yeah, voila. And that's where I try to give them the space to play, experiment, and feel safe, because they always get shot down when they try stuff, often anyway. They get criticism left and right. And I don't need to be another one of those voices telling them they're not good enough and this is bad and this sucks and blah, blah. And all the best teachers I ever had never told me those types of things. They always made me feel good about trying something else, and I try to give that to them as much as I can.
This is really beautiful. So I will just ask 2 rapid fire questions. One is, what kind of compliments you like to receive?
Oh, mine are so superficial.
Fine.
It's terrible. I'm ashamed of myself, but the truth, I love getting compliments on my appearance, because I don't get them that often. And so when I do get them, I really, really appreciate them. And I also feel like I love to get compliments on things that I've worked very hard to try and do. So when someone notices it and they say, oh, great job, that makes me feel good. if things that happen by accident that that are just natural, those compliments, they're nice, but they don't hit me as deeply as the ones that I go, thank you so much, because I really, really was trying to do that tonight, or I really wanted to get that across. And if you felt it and you liked it, then thank you. Yes. Yeah.
And the other thing is, what is an absurd thing about you that not many people would know about?
Oh, I can't tell you that either. Absurd. I have an old habit left over from when I was like, it must have been a baby, as long as I can remember, that I love taking a blanket and squeezing it in my hands, a blanket or a pillow. I must have done it when I was a baby, like kneading, like I must have done this when I was a baby, because I can't ever remember not doing it. And I even do it on stage during Lucia without we were always rehearsing, and there's a bed, and I have to sit down on the bed, and I always have to put the blanket over me. And I always feel myself like kneading the blanket. Like, people are gonna think I'm so insane. I was doing it during rehearsal. I would just sit there, and the director's talking, and I'm just sitting there with the blanket, like petting it like an insane. And she must think, what is wrong with her? Like, who does that? I don't know. So it's like an old habit. Yeah. Yes, it's very absurd. I'm embarrassed.
No,
but it's true.
It's self-soothing.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, it does feel very good. It feels comforting.
Okay, so I would love to know more, but in the limitation of time, we will stop here. And I really want to thank you. I really want to thank you for being open, vulnerable, raw, just being you, and being brave enough to be you. So thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you for this deep dive and this really sweet discussion. I feel like I learned a lot about you also, because like I said, I feel like there's so many things that are in the eye of the beholder, the eye of the ear of the listener, that say more about you and the kind of person that you are, because you're always curious about other people. It just, what a wonderful person you are. And I just want to say thank you for letting me talk to you today.
You have just heard the story of Lisette Oropesa, one of the most in-demand lyric coloraturists today, who performs leading roles at the most important opera houses around the world. She has appeared in concert halls and opera stages all over the world since graduating from the New York Young Artists Program in 2008, and has become one of the most celebrated singers of her generation, both for her singing and her inspiring personal story. Lisette is a devoted runner and has completed 6 marathons as an advocate for health and fitness. If you want to connect with her and find out more about her story, you can visit www.lisetteoropessa.com. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope you will like and subscribe so our stories can reach more.